Hello, New Zealand. It is good to be back. This is episode number 30, 30 without being banned by the Broadcasting Standards Authority, and especially nice to have my usual co-partner back in place, Simon O'Connor. Simon, how are you?
I am very well, although I will admit, Bob, I'm a little bit jet lagged, so no one should be
Hmm.
worried if I somehow sort of slide and fall off the camera. I'm just having a nap.
Okay, well, I didn't realise there was a dress standard. I would have worn my jacket if I'd known you were going to, but that's okay. Look, if you do want to make comment and say hello, as Lynette has from a wet and soggy Christchurch, yes, you better lock yourself up there. I hear it's real go. I hear Wellington Airport has just been closed, actually, and Murray also in a wet, flooded Canterbury. But you can comment, come through our YouTube channel, Family First New Zealand, or come through our Facebook page, Family First. You can watch on all the other social media channels. But if you want us to see your comment, then please come through YouTube or Family First Facebook page. Simon, we will get straight into it because we've got a lot of topics to cover, although I did just want to show you the image of the week. Oh, that's my topic, actually. Hang on. I've just got to remember which show I'm doing. I'm used to doing Straight Talk where I've got everything ready for me to go. Buttons. Here we go. Here's our image of the week. This is the rainbow crossing that they were going to do in Dunedin, Simon, but they ran out of money. But I think that might have been a good thing. Apparently, yeah. I mean, that's not even a rainbow, is it? It's got a whole lot of intersectionality in it, apparently.
Look, it's just a mess. And look, all of us are experiencing our rates going through the roof. And I think, regardless of people's views on rainbow crossings, we're actually just sick and tired of this wasteful, stupid spending. Just stick to the basics and try to keep our rates down.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I thought tonight we would just start with actually where have we been? We've both had fairly eventful weeks, although none as eventful as you. I'm actually quite jealous. Tell us a bit about what you did. We were playing Where's Wally or Where's Simon actually when I had Rodney on last week. But what did you get up to last week?
So I've actually been in Israel. I was hosted by the Israelis for a week to see Israel, in my case, for the first time, and for myself, obviously the horrors that were October 7th. So I was down in what they call the Gaza envelope, visiting some of the massacre sites. I was on the border of Gaza, and then to the likes of Jerusalem and Haifa and other places, looking at, if you will, Bob, at how Israeli society is functioning. So a rather affecting trip, quite harrowing. In many ways. I mean, it's a country at war. So that's where I was. That's the long and the short of it. I'll certainly be talking about it, writing about it. I've got lots of photos that I'll be sharing over the coming days and weeks.
Well, speaking of photos, there was two that we were going to show. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which one would
The
you
good
like
and the
first?
bad. Well,
Yeah, do you want
let's
the bad
start
or
with
the
the
good
bad.
first?
Let's start with the bad.
This one.
So, as people will know, over 1,400 Israelis were slaughtered by Hamas. And this is from a kibbutz 1 kilometer from the Gaza border called Neroz. Long and short, 1 in every 4 people were slaughtered there, civilians. This is just one of the photos I took in the houses because not only did they kill, but they tried to burn bodies in houses. It just shows the depth of horror. And why people like me use the term slaughter, because they weren't just wanting to kill, they were wanting to erase, in this case, the Jewish or Israeli people. So it's quite harrowing. This is just one of many photos I've taken. As I say, I'll be doing some photo essays on that to try and give people a bit of a sense of what it was like.
Okay. And on the good side?
Oh, this is my full Catholic. Here we go. Let's get everyone excited. This is the inside of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. It's been there since the time of Constantine in the year 300, or the years 300. Long and short, this is where tradition believes Jesus was crucified. And so right there in the middle, hopefully people can see, there is actually effectively a crucifix, which is above the spot where he was crucified. You can see on the alcoves left to right where the 2 thieves were. But yes, if you like gold and gild and lights and candles, that was the church for you.
Okay, well done. Let's get into. Oh, actually, sorry, I just need to tell you where I
What were you
was because
doing?
I actually did something. I'm not quite sure what it was. I'll check with my wife, but actually, we were in a lobby of a Central Auckland hotel with our technical producer Gordon Clark, with all our setup, our little studio there. And we were at a conference run by the Drug Detection Agency, which is an organisation that basically makes sure that workplaces are drug free and makes sure that people are safe. And they held this conference and they had the who's who of drug policy. And we got the chance to interview them. So, firstly, we talked to a guy who's an expert on emerging drug trends in Australia and New Zealand. We got to speak to this expert who talked about meth and the danger it is in New Zealand. We spoke to Tim Beck, who talked about the growing threat of fentanyl. He says it's already in the country. He says that the groups bringing it in, they're already set up here, ready to go, and it's not just gangs. And then I had this great interview with these two guys from Colorado. They legalized weed 12 years ago, and boy, their fact check on just what would happen is quite an eye opener. Now, this is the key thing about this conference, Simon, is that every politician was invited to come during the day to the conference. Not a single one wanted to show, not even Chloe, despite her interest in drugs. And here's the other thing. They offered these top-notch experts who have been in police enforcement, the DEA, have served for decades. They offered them to the mainstream media, not one take up. The media couldn't talk enough about drugs in 2018, 19, 20 during the referendum. They talk about it when, groups want to legalize all drugs or drug test, but media weren't interested in any of the interviews. In fact, that's one of the interesting things. So we're going to package up these 4 interviews for Family Matters and do a series. But for each of them, I said to them, well, one of the approaches in New Zealand, and of course this is from your time in Parliament, Simon, is one of the approaches I said of the left, the drug advocates in Parliament, is drug testing the drugs to make sure that they're 100% the illegal drug before the person takes the illegal drug. The eye-opening of the interviewees, these guys from the States, they just could not believe that we would take such a stupid approach. But of course, you were in Parliament when they were trying to get all that legislation through, weren't you?
I was, and of course now it's taxpayer funded. So we're funding, we're funding this indirectly, and as you would guess, those who are receiving the money want more and more because it's a business for them. It's a side business aside from the illegal business of drugs. But can I just say, Bob, that's why your work, and if I will, Family First, is so important, is you're actually getting these messages out because the politicians and the media lack moral courage to actually confront these issues and prefer to be ignorant. And they're not just putting, their families in danger, they're putting, New Zealand society in danger. And it's sad. So look, thank you for doing these interviews. I'm looking forward to hearing them.
Okay, let's get into our sort of first major topic. And the good news is that apparently the government has backed off from this whole charity tax issue, which is good. I mean, I've put as a title, no charity tax yet, because I think they will still do some work. But I say, credit to church groups, community groups who pushed back and said actually the value of what charities do is far greater than any tax revenue that you can gain because most charities are not making huge amounts of profit and any profit they make goes back into the community. But are you surprised at this back down? Because they were pushing it even during the campaign. We were highlighting Luxon saying he wants to review it. So is this a back down by the government?
Yeah, it is. Look, I was surprised. I thought they were on a trajectory to do it. To the government's credit, they did open a consultation, and I suspect basically those people you just mentioned, all those groups, we know the likes of Sue Barker, Juliet Chevalier Watson. I mentioned those 2 names because we've both interviewed them for Family Matters. In fact, we just dropped Juliet's interview yesterday talking around taxes. So these are tax experts in New Zealand who put in very thorough submissions. And I think basically the officials went, oh, this is far more complicated than we realized. And long and short, it was clear that the government couldn't maneuver quickly enough to get it right. I'd be surprised if they have a crack at it next year. And I only say it because it's election year. I think it could be a very dangerous policy to try and run in the election year. It's the sort of thing that'll upset people. But you're really correct to stress the word yet. This government wants money. It is desperate for money, and they will happily take it off charities if they can find some way to do it.
Well, it's one of those interesting topics that it affects not only the so-called social conservatives who, there are many churches and charities involved, but also left-wing charities. I mean, Waipareta Trust, Greenpeace, Helen Clark Foundation, yes, they're still charities. They haven't been deregistered like Family First, even though they do exactly the same type of work. But, it's going to affect both sides of the political aisle. So I wonder whether the government got a lot of pushback from both sides of the political aisle and realised it wasn't going to be a vote winner.
I think so. I suspect it's just the complexity. Nicola and others and Luxon are still talking about, well, we want to delineate between the business side and the charity side. That's never been done successfully anywhere in the world. The acronym they use is NBIT, N-B-I-T, particularly in the States where they try to delineate. It's just a nightmare. It's a mess. And again, you don't need to believe me. Look up my podcast with Sue Barker. She is an expert in charity law. Look up Associate Professor Chevalier Watts. Yeah, I'm getting tongue-tied. She's a charity expert out of the Waikato University. They're all saying you can't delineate. It's not worth delineating. Just leave the charities alone.
And one of the interesting things, just about before we move on, that most recent one on Family Matters is that she's not connected to the church in any way. And so she's arguing purely not on a religious, we want religious charities, we want churches to be charitable and be tax-free. She's arguing on the basis of the good it does in society, doesn't she?
Yeah, so Juliet came onto our radar, about a month ago, when she actually published an opinion piece entitled something like Atheist Calls for More Support of Charities. So she started her research years ago into charities in New Zealand. I think it's something like $6 billion of good, but she started her research basically thinking she'd find proof that charities were rorted, they did need to be taxed, and they were just, not worthwhile being protected from charitable tax. So through her research, though, she found quite the opposite. In fact, she's come out the other side saying, well, they need more support. These charities do extensive good into society. In fact, they don't tell the story strongly enough. And again, she's very clear, and she talks about it on our podcast, that, yeah, she is an atheist. She has no particular love or link to the churches, but can see the good that they do. And of course, there are other charities that aren't religious. And she's just saying, like Sue Barker, and I keep mentioning Sue's name because she's probably one of the foremost experts in this space, are just saying to the government, leave the charity sector alone.
Okay, well, there's a statement that everybody keeps making, and it's imported culture wars. Over the weekend, a little bit like 4 years ago when I sat in front of the TV and saw everybody with Jacinda going Jessica, then Tova straight after her press conference during COVID, I noticed that everybody keeps saying imported culture wars. And I was thinking, why is everybody saying it? Who's saying it? And what are they really getting at? And so over the weekend, put together this little video compilation, which has gone viral.
Poisonous, transphobic hate and imported culture wars.
Do not get sucked in by this imported culture war.
Labor's focus in this election won't be on imported culture wars.
So much of the time in this House is consumed by members of the coalition importing cultural wars.
I'm not interested in importing cultural wars into New Zealand.
How can a country that claims to treat everyone equally stand by while our rainbow communities are targeted by imported foreign culture wars?
Winston Peters is vowing to fight on over a Green MP's social media account. His rhetoric is being labelled by the Greens as a coordinated imported culture war.
There is no wonder that every other day we've got a new form of distraction politics from members of this government with their latest imported culture woke wars or whatever it is.
We have a choice as members of Parliament to reject this imported culture war of hate and division.
This is Aotearoa. We do not want imported culture wars
Simon, what are they getting at here? I mean, it's a lovely statement, but it seems to be coming from one side of the political aisle.
Oh, look, very much. I mean, it's a phrase that they're hoping makes Kiwis think that discussing issues like transgenderism, for example, or Indigenous rights, whatever, is just something foreign. They believe that things are perfectly okay as they are in New Zealand, and they just don't want to have any outside influences. But that's why they're reacting, Bob. They feel the power is slipping on them actually around the globe. Take the transgender argument, for example. There's been significant change from the Cass review to obviously the UK Supreme Court judgment. So they're just hoping by using that phrase that most Kiwis will go, oh yeah, we don't want to bring distractions from overseas here. Of course, the rich irony, if not hypocrisy, is that the likes of Chloe and Benjamin Doyle and whoever the rest of them were are the biggest importer of the culture wars as they define it. Just remember, they're the ones who run around wearing terrorist garb and trying to support, foreign wars. They're the ones who import cultural Marxism, which of course is from overseas. They're the ones who champion Black Lives Matter, which of course had absolutely nothing to do with New Zealand, but they were more than happy to import that. So they're just hypocrites, really. And I suppose that's the underlying point with a lot of what you hear in this sort of particularly left-wing rhetoric. Can happen on the right as well, but most of the time when the Chloes, the Green Party, the Māori Party are screaming imported culture wars or calling people fascists, they're actually looking at themselves in the mirror, their behaviour, their actions.
I found a classic example of 1973 when Roe v. Wade was passed in the United States, and then found a historic picture of a march up Queen Street with, I think, Helen Clark under the banner saying, "We want abortion on demand in New Zealand." And it was after that decision. And of course, then in 1977, the Contraception Sterilisation Act, or whatever it's called, was passed. So yeah, they imported the culture war. I did have a couple of media interviews, and I said, actually, we don't want to import the culture war. We want to export it and get back to Judeo-Christian values, which have underpinned our culture for good for so much time. So yeah, the Black Lives Matter was a classic. Winston Peters actually came out and made this comment saying that he sort of got involved because obviously he gets accused of it a lot, and the Greens would point, the finger at him. But he says the only people who use the term are Marxists and globalists who want to avoid debate and scrutiny of their wacky woke ideologies. So, I mean, he will win a lot of friends with that kind of commentary. Do you reckon the ACT Party are willing to stand up on this issue? I saw a media release from them sort of talking about woke banks targeting farmers, but ACT won't go near any of these controversial issues around gender, euthanasia, LGBT issues, drag queens. I mean, they're very liberal on those issues, aren't they?
ACT is very confused. That at one level they're a libertarian party, but at another they actually just sort of run with the poles and the wind. They're very inconsistent. So no, they won't. They'll try to avoid this. They'll dance on the head of a pin. They'll say they know what a woman is, but at the same time, it was the ACT Party who allowed birth certificates to be falsified based on your perception of your gender. So they're all over the place. Is the long and the short of it. National is always running for the hills on any of these issues. They just don't know what to do. So you'll see, you saw Luxon using the term there, probably not quite understanding what he was saying. So at the moment, you'd have to say it is only Winston who's speaking into it, but he sees political opportunity. Winston's always had a bit of a nose for these things, Bob.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting that Luxon was using it, saying he doesn't want to import culture wars in relation to the Roe v. Wade overturning. And of course, basically what he's saying is, oh, look, that's such a hot topic. I have my values, but I don't want to talk about them and I don't want to be held accountable for them. So we're not going to talk about it. In fact, interestingly, Simon, just in today's McBlog, I spoke to Wendy Francis, who I know you've interviewed. She spoke at our conference a couple of years ago, but I've talked to her about the Australian election. And they've got the same thing over this week and previous weeks, is that there have been certain topics that basically the media and the politicians won't go near. And one of them, of course, is abortion and late-term abortions, and just how liberal it is in Australia as well. So this we don't want your imported culture wars is basically saying we don't want to talk about this issue because we disagree with you and we don't want you getting traction with your social conservative views. That seems to be what it's really about.
Oh, look, 100%. And I remember arguing in the parliament years ago when they talk about the culture wars. They don't want a culture war because they think they're winning. They don't want anyone to fight. And don't get me wrong, we don't want wars in the strict sense. But actually, I've got no problem with arguing and debating these topics, as people know. But that's why they don't want them. They feel they're in the ascendancy. This is the Greens and the Māori Party and the far left. They feel that they're in control. And therefore, they don't want any dissent, any pushback. So bring it on, I say. Also, never forget, we're a global world now. We're well connected. The idea that we import things, well, of course we do. We do it all the time.
Okay, right, let's get into the next one. I just thought we should touch on this because obviously it's in the news a lot. Are our senior doctors getting shortchanged? I just thought it was interesting. I mean, obviously we're concerned about medical professionals who are going offshore because there's more work available, there's better pay, and it seems like we are doing a lot of cutting, not just of backroom, but also of front room and senior staff. And I know that from a personal family experience that they're going through. But Simeon Browden tweeted this, and he said that an offer has been made and the union hasn't even put it to the doctors to vote on. And the key elements of the offer, I mean, it looked fairly generous in some of it. There was lump sum payments, there was bonding, there's a retention payment there, annual increase in steps. In fact, I did hear an interview on News Talk ZB where the interviewer was almost embarrassing the doctor when they were talking about specifics about how much they are getting paid. Now, look, we value them. They do work long hours, but at the same time, are they being shortchanged?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, internationally, comparatively, probably yes. You summed it up at the start. There are more beneficial pickings in other countries. Let's be clear on that. But it's always going to be hard for New Zealand to compete. And let's be also clear, the government doesn't have much money. The economy is stuffed. They're borrowing to the hilt. There ain't a lot of money. But, so actually not a but there. The first point is, of course, we'd like to pay doctors more and teachers more and ambulance drivers and police officers, but it doesn't, to me, seem feasible. The but is that doctors are already paid. These doctors are already in the $350,000 a year. And I think it's important to mention this because I found when I was in Parliament, it didn't matter if it was the teachers protesting or the doctors, they very rarely tell you just how much they are being paid. They just tell you it's not enough. And you've highlighted some of the aspects there. But these doctors, as I say, get salaries of hundreds of thousands. They get, is it like 3 months sabbatical? All paid for. Every 5 or 6 years, they get their subscriptions to the likes of medical journals paid for. They get paid for conferences. There's a whole lot of, if you will, perks on the side. So they're not on a bad wicket compared to the average wage of 50 or 55,000 New Zealand. So I can understand why the Minister of Health is a bit exasperated, including that, was it 4,000 or so people will miss out on surgery. So it's a little bit hard for these doctors to say we want to care for people more while declining to, help at least 4,000 people over the coming days. And something doesn't feel right about this. And the final one you highlighted is the union. The union didn't even go to the membership. So I think this is just a direct attack on the government. They're trying to make a political point at the expense of the patients.
Yeah. Okay, the relationship, sexuality and education is being reviewed, and obviously we've put out a lot of information looking at the draft guidelines and giving people guidance on how to respond. The other side is, they're starting to lobby their troops as well, and just what they're saying, they've sort of exposed it. So there was an article, I won't tell you what website it's on because, Simon, you'll raise your eyebrows that I'm even looking at the website, but I monitor it because I see commentary like this. And it's Labour MP Shannon Halbert, who's a radical activist. But he's written this article, "Education is the best tool that we have." Now, he probably misspelt it and should have put indoctrination as the best tool that we have, or maybe education is the best tool that we have to indoctrinate kids away from their parents. But he says, he's basically talked about the fact that the RSE, they want to go back to things talking about gay marriage, banning conversion therapy. He says school isn't just about times table and grammar. It's where they learn about their peers and about relationships and sexuality. I'm not sure he's talked to parents about whether that's what they want. He says that if you think that kids are too young for this, you're just pearl clutching, even though parents are concerned about the age appropriateness. And then he finishes with his concern that in the framework, he actually admits that they do cover the LGBT issue, but he says sexual orientation has been reduced to only 4 categories: heterosexual, homosexual, gay and lesbian, bisexual, and asexual, when we know that our communities use much broader language to define themselves. Now, I actually responded to his tweet by saying, well, we couldn't fit all 200 plus sexualities on one sheet of paper, Shannon. We would have run out of trees to print the document. But look, it sort of does expose. Actually, just before you comment, our friend Benjamin Benjamin Doyle, Green MP, he, and credit to Let Kids Be Kids, because they unearthed this little clip of Benjamin Doyle encouraging his troops as well. Have a listen to what he says.
The Ministry of Education has recently released their draft Relationships and Sexuality Education Framework to be implemented into a refreshed curriculum by 2027. There are 2 key points you need to make sure that you cover at least in your feedback. The first is that you want the ministry to retain and strengthen their consent education. The second thing I would say in my feedback to the ministry is that you want to include gender and takatapui and rainbow identities more genuinely, authentically and consistently across the curriculum framework. Currently, all reference to takatapui and Māori or any cultural sexualities and identities has pretty much been removed from the framework. Intersex identity has only been mentioned once in an example across 13 years of education, and there's a very heavily binary referencing to bodies, to relationship structures, and to how people exist in the world, which we know erases rainbow identities. So the second point you need to cover, again, is making sure that gender education, as well as rainbow and takatapui identities, sexualities, and bodies are included meaningfully in the new curriculum framework. More details in the caption below.
Yeah, so they want to go back to the radical RSE, which everybody's rejected, government doesn't want, parents have rejected, schools are concerned, don't want to go near it, a lot of schools. But they are ramping up their troops, aren't they, Simon? And effectively they're saying, look, we just want to keep it radical. We want kids to be taught about 112 genders and 200 plus sexualities, and let's do it younger and younger.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, the first point, and you've highlighted this for many, many years, and for those viewing, there's age appropriateness to discuss some topics in the RSE framework, but these guys want sexually explicit indoctrinating materials to very, very young children. It's just not right. It's just not appropriate. The second point is they are obsessed with what they want to be rather than what is. And that's I think a fundamental distinction here. RSE, relationship and sexuality education, should focus on what is. It's the basics. It's the birds and the bees, as we used to talk about. What these guys want is to indoctrinate by a whole lot of what they want it to be. And as you say, Bob, I mean, we're going to sit down and talk about all 200 plus genders and beliefs. I mean, let's be blunt and honest here, seeing that Doyle has reappeared. Interesting once again when it has to do with children. Is he going to talk about his little proclivity and that little subsection of the rainbow community that he keeps referencing that, of course, we don't quite know what it is? There's just something a bit disturbing in all of this, including too with Shannon Halbert. Why are they so obsessed with the education of children into this very particular space? They're not doing their little TikTok videos around mathematics or English or te reo Māori. No. All their efforts all their efforts is around this sexuality and relationships education. And you've got to ask the question rhetorically, why is that?
Maybe we could get John Campbell, that prolific investigator, to do a little documentary on Benjamin Doyle or, Waiparaira Trust, what they're up to, or even Te Pāti Māori about not doing their financial returns, even though legally they have to. They seem just obsessed with certain churches.
The emoter-in-chief, I call John. He just sort of, just great dramatics. But of course, as you know, Bob, and of course that's the loaded element of the question, he never touches serious topics. It's just usually a hatchet job wrapped up, and again, in his emotions. So no time for his work.
Okay, let's see if we can find a topic that we disagree on, because I'd really like to have a good old Barney with you, and I think we may be on to one. Here's the latest announcement from the government.
News on the law and order front today, folks. We are reinstating a total ban on prisoner voting because being a member of society comes with both rights and responsibilities. And frankly, if you're in prison, you lose those rights, including being able to vote.
Yep, fair enough. Absolutely. If you're not out of prison, then why should we have to take the voting form to you? You lose your privilege, and you shouldn't be allowed to vote. What say you, Simon?
Well, no. I as you know, because I've written about it. No, I actually believe prisoners should be able to vote for the system that incarcerates them. That's the very simple principle that I operate from, and it actually, in a strange way, legitimizes, amongst many other reasons, them being locked up. They've voted for this system. And I also make the point, we remove their right to associate, to move, for example, because it's for the safety of society. The right to vote, I don't think their exercising it has any impact on society. And if we really want to push the point, because I don't think Luxon understands this, we don't remove all their rights and responsibilities. We don't remove their right to eat, their right to healthcare. So look, I just think it's a cheap political stunt, which probably will now fire up people in the comment section, but you better fire back.
Ricky says it only affects about 2,000 prisoners. Rosie says prisoners shouldn't have any rights. Look, I mean, that's a persuasive argument. I agree. I just think that if they're...
Oh, good. Okay, we'll end there. Thank you.
I just realised that to get into prison, though, you've got to commit it's pretty hard to get into prison. And to get into prison, we are dealing with serious crimes. There are victims. We've taken away certain privileges. Their right to vote is another privilege they've taken away. I do notice, cynically, it tends to be centre-right governments that like this restriction, and I suspect because they think that everybody in prison are left-wing voters. I'm not sure whether it's true, of course. I mean, maybe in the white-collar crime, there's lots of right-leaning voters as well. But, I mean, why do you think that tends to be centre-right parties? Is this just the strong on law and order approach?
Yeah, it looks strong. It's why I say it's cheap. I don't actually think it achieves anything. It doesn't change the electoral outcome. I don't think it's actually a punishment. I don't think any prisoner is going to be crying in their bunk cell that they can't vote. I suppose that could be seen as a counter-argument to my point, but I just don't really think it achieves much. But it looks good. It looks strong. It looks dramatic. Which is why it's quite popular for the centre-right, which, as you've rightly indicated, is very much about the strong on crime. I think they'd be better off focusing on a whole lot of preventative measures, increasing sentencing, for example. I know that's not preventative, but there's many other things they could be doing. The whole not voting just doesn't make sense to me. As I say, I think there's value in voting for the system which incarcerates you.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one. Let's move on to the next one. And look, the Human Rights Commission, I am no supporter of the Human Rights Commission. I'd close it down tomorrow. So let me just lay that out. But there have been one or two good appointments recently by the government. I think they've been a little bit more balanced. They even got their Easter messaging correct and acknowledged Christian beliefs in their messaging. So there has been some improvements. But there is so let me tell it from my angle, and then I'll get you to respond, Simon. The Chief Human Rights Commissioner, I mean, his name is Stephen Rainbow, and my understanding, he's a member of the LGBT community. So, I mean, he's a shoo-in for this job. I mean, soon as they saw his name on the application form, surely they said, that is the surname for this job. So personally, I wasn't surprised he got the job, but there was a whole lot of opposition. People didn't like some of the things he said. And my understanding, perhaps you can correct me on this, Simon, is that the reason that there was opposition was because he actually believes that a woman is an adult human female, and he agreed with some of the views of pro-woman campaigner Posey Parker. Is that where he's sort of really got into trouble with the left?
It's twofold. So I know Stephen, and actually a lot of time and respect for him. He and I disagree on a number of issues. But two things which upset the radical left is that he, as you said, believes in, he wouldn't accept that the T is part of the LGBTI plus community. That's the first part. And the second is actually he's not radical enough for them. And the second is that he actually believes there are issues around anti-Semitism. He's expressed some support of the Jewish people in the past, which seems to be a no-no for the far left, which is one of the reasons he's now back under fire, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. There seems to be a bit of a divide in the LGBT between the LGBs and the Ts, because, I mean, as you and I know, Stephen Rainbow, there's Annie O'Brien, who's a commentator, there's Rachel Stewart, who used to work for the New Zealand Herald. There's a number of people who would see themselves as part of that LGBT community, but, they're getting isolated because of this. So maybe so there's a little bit of background. But anyway, a month ago, he raised concerns that rising Muslim immigration to New Zealand poses a threat to our Jewish communities. And look, the biggest threat to Jewish communities would be that. I mean, you just have to look worldwide. You just have to look even in Australia and even at some of the universities in the United States. He denied some of the claims, but he apologised for misinterpretation. So that was reported. This report is a month ago. Then, lo and behold, there's a report on One News last night, and there's new claims that he apparently said mean things about the Afghan community. So let me just play you a little excerpt from this news report, because I know nobody watched One News, and I have to because it's research and work. But just have a watch of this report, because the documentation doesn't actually say he said anything mean. It just says he mentioned them. And it's simply handwritten notes by a staff member of a radical leftist organisation like the Human Rights Commission. And the Labour representative, listen to what he says. He says that the Human Rights Commission should be a defender of minorities, which my understanding is that Jews are far more minority than Muslims. But anyway, here's the report.
Just a few weeks back.
And I don't want to get into justifying it. I've apologised and that's it. All right? And I want to move on.
Our Chief Human Rights Commissioner promising MPs he'd do better after causing offence in a meeting with a Jewish community leader accused of Islamophobia over comments about the threat Muslims pose to the Jewish community. He disputed many details.
So let's be very clear. I have apologised for any misinterpretation of those comments that I made.
Now One News has obtained notes officials took at that meeting of what he did say. They show Dr. Rainbow raised the increase in Muslim immigration as a threat to our Jewish community.
I think it's a deeply Islamophobic comment. I don't think he should be scapegoating an entire community like that. And I think it illustrates that he's deeply unsuitable for that role.
The Chief Human Rights Commissioner should be the defender of minorities, and this statement looks like an Islamophobic attack on one of our most vulnerable communities.
In the latest census, about 1.5% of New Zealanders identified as Islamic. The Justice Minister Paul Goldsmith told One News that he wants the Chief Human Rights Commissioner to be more careful with his comments in the future. The Minister recently defended going against advice and appointing Dr. Rainbow to the role, saying he thinks he's an effective communicator. Dr. Rainbow refused to be interviewed for this story. He has pushed back strongly against another allegation that he described New Zealand's Afghan community as anti-Semitic at the same meeting.
I did not say the comments that were attributed to me about that.
The official's notes show Dr. Rainbow did refer to the Afghan community, but aren't specific. One official said they would follow up on his comments.
It appears that there were things said about the Afghan community which were erroneous and inappropriate. We need to know what they were.
We need a proper investigation of what he said.
In a statement received a short time ago, Dr. Rainbow said he stood by his earlier apology and regrets the harm he's caused.
Okay, Simon, I just smell a rat in all of this. Firstly, let me just show you the percentage in our population in terms of minorities. You'll see there that Muslim is about halfway down, and Islam, and it's 1.4%. Judaism is 0.1%. So if you're talking about minorities, as Duncan Webb's going on about, yeah. But handwritten notes and just saying that certain topics are covered. I mean, the rat I smell, Simon, is that you've got a deeply embedded public service in a leftist organisation like the Human Rights Commission. Someone with a bit of common sense and a bit more balance comes into the organisation, and basically the knives are out. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yep. Oh no, you're 100% correct. You're 100% correct. Sorry, am I still there or have I frozen?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, there we go.
We got you.
Sorry, an earlier screen looked like I'd frozen. No, look, you're 100% correct. This is a dirty little hatchet job based a lot on conjecture. I'd also point out they never actually approach the facts or debate the facts. So if he has made these statements, then match them with counter statements. But that's not what's happened. In fact, this Alternative Jewish Voices is a very far left radical organisation, basically disowned by the wider Jewish community. They're a very fringe group. Duncan Webb is very well known for his anti-Israel, anti-Jewish views. So these are two very radical anti-Israel, almost anti-Semitic, one would suggest. So they are more than happy to play the ball, the man, not the ball. Secondly, let's stick with the facts. There is an issue with Islamic violence. Okay, let's be absolutely clear about this. That doesn't mean every Muslim by any means, but there is a major problem. 47,000 terrorist acts by Islamic terrorists since 9/11. 47,000. This is significant around the globe, and New Zealand is not immune to this, but it also does sit alongside other threats. White supremacists are an issue. They do have anti-Semitic views as well, but to basically call any critique within our Islamic community Islamophobic is just a cheap attempt to shut down discussions. Imagine if you and I, and I'll finish on this, screamed and yelled about Christophobia every time someone mentioned something about the Christian faith. It's just not on. And so this is the red light that should be in people's minds. It's not about Stephen Rainbow. It's not about that news article. It's that Islamophobia in this case is being thrown around to stop discussion. And that's just wrong.
I just can't believe that a left-wing media are going after a guy with the surname Rainbow. I mean, isn't that homophobic?
Well, it is. But he's not radical enough for them. He's more moderate. So yes, he's a proudly gay man. He's actually been very accomplished in life, but he doesn't hold the radical, far left progressive views. So they're going to attack him. And the analogy is the same of Māori on the centre right. So you think of someone like, well, actually my brother-in-law, Simon Bridges, you think of actually David Seymour, whakapapas to various iwi as well, but they're not radical enough, and therefore they had to be attacked. So I think, again, as I said at the start, just a dirty little hatchet job on Stephen Rainbow, who I think actually is doing a good job. And if what he says is wrong, then counter it with facts, not an attempt to attack his personality or who he is.
Okay, speaking of disasters, the Wellington mayoralty is an interesting one, but the current mayor, Tory Whanau, has dropped out of the Wellington mayoral race. I did see this on the One News website, which I thought was quite funny. I'm not sure if what they meant a huge sense of relief. Tory whānau exits Wellington mayoral race. They need to put who actually put that quote or said that. But Andrew Little may step into the space. I know you respect him as a fellow politician. I don't have a lot of time for him because of his work around the cannabis referendum and the abortion law. But, is he a shoo-in for this position? Where's the centre-right candidate in Wellington, or is there no centre-right people in Wellington? Well, I know there are, but, what's going on there?
It's pretty much the latter. Look, Wellington is the wokest part of New Zealand. You can see that in all the surveys. Yep. It leans very strongly to the left. It's why you can even vote in a Green person. I think she ran strictly as independent, but she's Green Party aligned. So look, not a chance that a centre-right person is going to win. Andrew, I think, will do a better job, but he's still very strongly to the left. He's a very left-wing person. In fact, he'll probably carry on a lot of Tories' policies, but he might implement them more efficiently, not necessarily effectively, but efficiently. Look, she was hopeless and an absolute disaster. Not only in how she managed things politically, but clearly she's, hasn't got things sorted in her own life. And so I hope for her sake, she just steps away. But there was already confusion, Bob. Within 12 hours, she was saying, well, she'd be the deputy mayor, or that she would run for parliament, or that she might be a minister. I think this just shows a person who's very confused. And I'll just say, as someone who's lived in Wellington and who pays rates in Wellington, I am very relieved to see that she's going.
Well, I saw she gave herself a rating of 9 out of 10, which generally when you rate yourself, you don't sort of go as high as 9. If you want a compliment, you might say 7 maybe or 8, but 9 was pretty good. But look, with all the dysfunction around what's happened in council, I think she'd be a perfect candidate for the Greens. And I would say, she would be perfect in that party. And they are looking for some decent candidates. Really looking for some decent candidates.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure she's the one. Like so many young ones who, well, not even 20 young by age, but people who, go into politics with great hopes and ambitions, that's fantastic. Yeah. But the proof's in the pudding, and she's failed spectacularly on just about every metric.
Yeah. Okay, there is breaking news on our text feed. Somebody's figured out that you're married to Simon Bridges' sister. So that'll be breaking news on the front page of the Herald tomorrow morning. It's exciting, eh?
Scandal.
Yeah, okay. Right. Now, just final topic for tonight, and it's a bit of a concerning one because it's about educational activism. I think we all know that it's going on, but there has been 2 really blatant examples recently, and I might need you to talk to 1 or 2 of them. So firstly, the Centrist reported that Auckland University has backed down because a professor in her lecture said that there are only 2 sexes, and somebody got upset and triggered and went and made a complaint because of the hurty words, and they tried to censure her, and she said, no, get stuffed, and Auckland University backed down as a alma mater of Auckland University, to be honest. It just embarrasses me what's coming out of Auckland University at the moment. And then this other example about an English teacher at Northcote College who says, no, I'm not going to teach the new proposed English curriculum because apparently they don't want to cover books like The Crucible or Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven or 1984 by George Orwell. Maybe they don't like 1984 because they realise it's coming true. And there's even Kiwi authors, Oscar Kitely and Witi Ihemaira, but he says he says the proposed new curriculum enabled systemic racism. But it does, both these stories are examples of educational activism, aren't they? And we should be concerned.
Oh, absolutely. It's outright indoctrination. These are people in privileged positions who have a lot of power over young minds and are desperate to force their political and cultural views. So starting with Elizabeth Rata, she is a very esteemed professor in education. And this is the reason why the government rightly is pushing through basically institutional neutrality laws and freedom of academic freedom laws. And trying to tighten them, because the universities at the moment, like Auckland, and we've seen it at Massey as well, try to clamp down on academics who have a different opinion. In this case, around biological reality, and so the universities are acting as bullies. So the government is putting in place some new legislation. The universities, by and large, are reacting and screaming and yelling of how bad this is, and it's affecting academic freedom, which is, again, a hypocritical joke. It goes back to what we discussed earlier about imported culture wars. What they yell and scream about is what they themselves are doing. So again, censoring was what they tried to do to Elizabeth Rata. You don't have to agree with her. You and I would, but she's allowed to say it. But they tried to censor her. But after the UK ruling, they've apologised. And this guy here should basically be sacked. Why on earth? Because his big thing is there's not enough diversity in the English curriculum. You don't study Bangladeshi, for example, in English, as you wouldn't study English when learning Bangladeshi. The other is he didn't feel there was enough about the Treaty of Waitangi. Now, what on earth that's got to do with the English curriculum, I don't know. History, social studies, political studies, philosophy, go for it. But why English? Why is obvious, because this guy, David Taylor of Northcote College, wants to indoctrinate children. He doesn't want to teach them about Edgar Allan Poe or Oscar Knightley. He wants to indoctrinate them on his view of the Treaty of Waitangi. He shouldn't be around children. Go and join the Maori Party.
Okay, well, he probably will. We'll probably see
Probably
him.
already has.
We will see him in the party. Right, we're out of time. Do you want to tell it? I think you did mention about your Substack. What was the latest article you did? I saw it flick through this morning. I was very jealous. What was it on?
Prisons and Pope. So I outlined why I'm right and Bob's wrong about prison
Nice
voting.
alliteration there, prisons and popes.
So about that and a little bit about the Pope and how I think a lot of the media and politicians misunderstand the man and trying to link their views to him. So that's a quick Substack. But you're prolific. What are your recent ones?
Well, I did a little expose on the fact that you and me and every other taxpayer in New Zealand is funding New Zealand On Air to commission programs like, for example, the Gender Agenda. They gave just under $500,000 for the first series, which was it was about 50 minutes of work. Whatever you do, don't tell our technical producer, Gordon, that people are being paid that amount of money for 50 minutes of work, because he'll be in front of my desk for a pay rise. But it's 50 minutes of basically indoctrination, gender affirmation, two sexes, and using examples of hyenas and clownfish, and interviewing lots of activists. And New Zealand On Air have just given another just under $500,000 to produce some more. So they're working hard to indoctrinate, and the programs are specifically targeting young people. So that's New Zealand On Air, funded by the government, funded by the taxpayer, and it's about time the government got some backbone and sorted it out. But I'm not holding my breath, are you?
Yeah, don't hold your breath, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically
right.
you're saying $1 million for basically 2 hours of content.
Yeah, it's about between 800 to maybe just over 800,000 for 2 lots of 50, which, I mean, Gordon and I would have put together 2 hours just in the lobby talking about the effects of drugs and why New Zealand dodged a bullet for voting no in the cannabis referendum. So I might, have you got any applications? I might apply for 800,000 from New Zealand On Air for that. I'm not holding my breath that we'll get any funding for it though.
Be worth it just for fun.
It would be. We'll publish it on the front page. All right, we're out of time. We will be back next Thursday night with Political Playback. I'll be back with Daybreak tomorrow morning, and you're full steam with your Solid Ground as well at 7:30. So there's always something going on at 7:30 in the morning. One of us is awake, so that's the main thing. Anyway, nice to have you back, Simon. I'll wear my jacket next week. And thank you for watching, everybody. We will see you next time.